Good evening, Craig. Mayflower Police Chief Robert Setkowski tells me the evacuations will remain in effect overnight. The chief says it's too early to say how much oil spilled, but says crews have prevented it from getting into Lake Conway. The work ahead will focus on cleanup around the affected areas in town.
So that is a pipeline that is busted and is flooded the neighborhood.
Drew Barnes is a THV11 viewer who sent us this video of the Northwood subdivision in Mayflower Friday. Authorities say it's a mess triggered by an ExxonMobil crude oil pipeline that ruptured, spewing out oil Friday afternoon.
The smell is unbelievable. I mean, look.
A lot is all I can estimate. It flowed from approximately 2:45 when it was discovered by a homeowner to after 3, and I want to say almost 3:30.
Mayflower Police Chief Robert Setkowski says it's not clear why the pipeline ruptured, but it was later shut off by Exxon. The spill prompted evacuations as cleanup crews tackled some drainage areas in town where the oil flowed to. Along Highway 89 across from Lake Conway, crews sealed off 2 pipes under the road to keep oil flowing from a city drainage pond into the lake.
Now, I'm just over here trying to make sure that we get it stopped before it gets into the lake, because we'll have a real problem.
Mayor Randy Holland on the scene as well Friday, where authorities did manage to keep the lake from any contamination, but still turning the start of this holiday weekend upside down in Mayflower.
Incredible, and that is oil.
Now, as for the residents who had to leave their homes, the police chief says he's not aware of any that requested shelter assistance, but he says Exxon has said the company will put folks up in a hotel if need be. Craig?
Thank you.
Mike Oswald is worried about his mother.
No, I didn't know there was one.
This body of water sits directly behind the Oswald home. It was one of the features that drew them to the neighborhood.
We like this area here, and it's just pretty nice.
But after a oil crude pipeline ruptured Friday, Oswald says his mother began to experience headaches.
The smell, the smell's really bad.
Exxon reps took air samples from the Oswald home and say they will return later in the evening to take more.
At night it's worse, I think, because they run these pumps at nighttime.
Oswald is like many Arkansans who said they had no idea the pipeline existed. In fact, the pipeline starts in Illinois and ends at the Texas Gulf Coast. Its path cutting straight through the middle of the natural state. The crude oil enters the north and eastern part of the state in Randolph County. It travels through Lawrence, Independence, White, of course Faulkner County, through Pulaski, the tip of Perry into Garland, Howard, Pike, and exits through Little River County. Officials with the Arkansas Geological Commission say most of the pipeline is buried underground, except for places where it crosses a body of water. They say though there are published maps of the pipeline after 9/11, details of its location were somewhat suppressed, but say information on the whereabouts has loosened with time. On Monday, crews worked on the lake behind the Oswald home, removing crude oil. Not far from their home, Mayflower resident Christian Alexander feels residents should have been warned.
I'm just thinking somebody don't get sick.
Alexander says he knew nothing about the pipeline.
Sure, before we buy the house, what is underground or what the house is on.
Guys, so far about 8 or 9 animals have been rescued from Mayflower, all of them being ducks. I've seen the process firsthand. It's a story of volunteers coming together to try to make a bad situation better.
Easy girl, easy girl, easy girl.
The oil leak in Mayflower over the weekend left wildlife in a tizzy. Animals are getting shuttled off to a cleaning after being spotted covered in oil and rescued.
In the process of me picking that animal up from Game and Fish and going to Hawk and delivering it, 2 more were found and delivered. So, and here comes the other.
Ailish Palmer is volunteering time to help out Mayflower's feathery friends. It started off with an SOS heard online.
Put it out on Facebook that she needed somebody to immediately pick up animals, so I did, and I got the first one.
We followed Ailish to Russellville, where volunteers are washing and warming the wildlife. Lynn Slater is the director of the wildlife rehabilitation organization Hawk Center.
So we have to make sure they're stable, which means giving them fluids, making sure that they're the proper temperature and that they're out of shock. And then we use Dawn and we bathe them.
So far, only birds have been brought in.
We have 3 unknown birds. We have 2 blue-winged teals that are male. We have 2 mallard hens, 1 mallard drake, 1 possible wood duck. They're just adding up.
But they're not in it alone anymore. Exxon calling in the experts.
They're bringing them from out of state, so it may be another day before they are actually cleaning animals.
The quick fix will be washing the animals, but over time,
you don't know the long-term impact of the absorption of oil into their bloodstream, through their skin, through their feather follicles, through their eyes, through their nose, through whether they have ingested it or not.
Arkansas Game and Fish going to continue to monitor the situation as well as checking on the fish in the water. We'll be sure to update you on any of those changes as they come. I'm Sarah Fortner for THV11. Back to you guys.
It seems like it's getting better each day, but definitely very strong.
Mayflower parent Kayla Francis says dropping the kids off at school Monday came with a smelly reminder of Friday's oil spill.
I was concerned with them going outside for recess, so I emailed the teachers and asked if they could please stay inside.
The mother of 3 girls found out later students stayed inside Monday as a precaution. Maintenance crews also spent the day cleaning vents. There were 2 rounds of air quality tests too. They turned out negative.
Now certainly they might smell it, but again, brief exposures should not have any significant health concerns.
Dr. William Mason with the Arkansas Department of Health says the real health concern right now is in part of the Northwood subdivision, where the oil pipeline ruptured Friday and spewed out oil. 22 homes evacuated, and the all clear yet to come.
The Department of Health's primary focus is on the health of this neighborhood. And that's what we're going to look at with the air quality monitoring samples.
No timeline yet for a safe return here, but Dr. Mason says you're okay on a trip to the grocery store or your child's school. Still, parents like Francis wonder about the impact of all this long term.
You never know, 20 years down the road, what's going to happen.
One of the biggest confusions over the oil spill is what exactly is on the ground out there in Mayflower and how harmful can it be? And here to explain a little bit further is Laura Rule, Assistant Professor with the Department of Earth Sciences at UALR. And first of all, Laura, Exxon is labeling this as Wabasca heavy crude. I hope I get that name right, because it's certainly making national headlines. What makes a certain oil heavy as opposed to light?
Well, I think in this instance it's a crude oil, so it hasn't been refined yet, and it tends to be a little denser than water is, and so I think that's kind of what makes it a heavy oil.
I think anybody that was in that neighborhood will tell you it's pretty dense oil. Mm-hmm. And the next question, obviously, if it's denser, thicker, is this going to make it harder to clean up?
I think it does make it a bit heavier to clean up. You're not going to be able to just wash it off with water. You're going to take some, it's going to take some different either chemical or biological components to actually wipe it off, or possibly even just the mechanical removal of that oil.
We actually had a viewer that went around and got video of this oil gushing into the neighborhood. You've seen that video. You and I talked. Well, I'm dying to know what your reaction was. As a earth sciences person, did you look at that and go, oh no? What was your reaction?
That was my reaction.
Right.
I was, oh no, that's not good at all. You don't want to see that in a neighborhood in this area at all, and that's not something you want to see coming out of, you know, an underground pipeline.
It looks like, on the surface, that they pretty much prevented it from getting into Lake Conway, but now do we still need to be concerned about this oil permeating the water tables beneath the surface?
Well, I think because it is a heavier crude oil, that it does not necessarily permeate the ground, which is was good news, is some things that I was reading. And so I think they hopefully will be able to just remove the soil, remove it mechanically, in addition to some of those biological and chemical
Now, what about the water quality? I know that's a primary concern to you. How confident are you that the water is still safe up there and near the pipeline, which now we understand is Lake Maumelle?
Right. Well, I know they have put many mechanical barriers in place, and so as long as those are working, they hopefully will prevent that from getting into the lake itself. I know I've seen some videos of ducks and things covered in oil, and so that could be a little problematic, but hopefully they'll prevent it from reaching the main part of Lake Conway.
We're probably going to come back to you sometime in the future and go, now what do you know? Because I think like you, we're all finding out at the same time just exactly what's at stake here. Laura Rule, thank you. Assistant Professor, Earth Sciences at UALR. Let's go back to Dawn.
Earlier today, Attorney General Dustin McDaniel was in Mayflower to tour the most affected area, the neighborhood where 22 families still remain evacuated.
I want the people of Mayflower to know that the people of Arkansas stand with them and that all of us will not rest until this is made right.
Arkansas's top law enforcement officer, Dustin McDaniel, put boots on the ground Wednesday to evaluate the damage from Friday's oil spill.
That neighborhood was like a scene from The Walking Dead. There were still Easter decorations on homes, but there was not a soul in sight other than people in hazmat suits.
McDaniel says he's fully prepared to hold Exxon responsible for the pipeline incident.
I woke up this morning intending to come here, see with my own eyes, and prepare to do my job as I should. I leave emotionally impacted and committed all the more to hold Exxon responsible for what has happened.
McDaniel says even after limited exposure to the smell, he understands why the community of Mayflower is so concerned.
I have been reminded by Exxon's representatives that this is a relatively small spill and cleanup is going just great. I hope that they realize that to the homeowners in this area, it is not small, it is catastrophic. And for those who fear for their drinking water, things are not great.
Dustin McDaniel's office will continue their investigation and work with Exxon to try to figure out what may have caused this pipeline to burst. Reporting in Mayflower, Meredith Mitchell, THV 11 News.
The hum of vacuum trucks drowns out the sound of trickling rain as Exxon cleanup crews scatter a wooded area in Mayflower.
We have many vacuum trucks on site sucking the oil out of water pools.
The rain causes the heavy crude to spread out and seep to lower ground. More than 600 people work to restore Mayflower back to normal, according to Exxon Vice President Karen Tyrone.
A focus for us now is the impacted neighborhood. For the homes that have impacted soil, we've removed more than 50%.
Boom lines Lake Conway and other waterways to make sure oil doesn't spread downstream. Once vacuum trucks take in the bulk of the oil, crews use absorbent material by hand.
To a manual sopping of the oil, cleaning of the vegetation.
For those worried excess oil could surface months after Exxon leaves, Tyrone says oil from spills typically rises to ground level.
It would not migrate underground. It came up and then flowed across soil and ground to just following a low point, following gravity as you would expect.
Dr. Jonathan Jameson works at this Mayflower chiropractic and rehab clinic. He plans to live in town too, but that's on hold right now after the oil spill.
My initial reaction was, that's just my luck,
It turns out the home Jameson and his family closed on last Friday was here in the Northwoods subdivision.
Incredible, and that is oil.
Where just hours after the closing, oil spewed from a ruptured ExxonMobil pipeline.
Once I signed the papers, then the house was mine, and there was no turning back as far as that went.
Jameson says the home he bought was on the right side of this THV11 viewer video. We circled the sold sign at the house.
After probing and finding out that, our property was seemingly unaffected and it was flowing down the opposite side of the street, it was all right, knowing that.
Still, the father of a 2-year-old girl wants to make sure there's not a leftover smell inside the home.
Of course, you don't want to ever expose your children to anything that's going to be detrimental to their health.
He says ExxonMobil has promised to test air quality inside if homeowners want it. For now, he's keeping a positive attitude.
It was out of my control.
Feeling this spill just one of life's curveballs.
Life's always going to throw something at you. You know, it's all about the way that you respond to it.
It's been horrible. Tough.
Valerie and Warren Andrews came to Exxon's residence meeting on Tuesday optimistic, hoping Exxon would bring good news. But by Friday,
Exxon's making position with us that there's been no property damage whatsoever.
They needed legal advice.
The questions weren't really answered. They were kind of walked around.
They're trying to be helpful to a certain extent. They are. You know, they're doing what they have to do. But as far as long-term property values, I truly believe that they're gone.
This same substance, this oil that spilled here in y'all's backyards, was spilled in Michigan 3 years ago, and they're still cleaning it up.
Hare, Wynn, Newell, and Newton have faced Exxon in court before, along with BP after the Gulf Coast oil spill in 2010. They, along with Little Rock firm Johnson & Vines, offered their advice to Mayflower residents Friday night.
It'd be unrealistic at this point to say we know what all the answers are, but as we're, helping these folks navigate this process, we just want to give them some questions to ask and some things to look out for.
For the Andrews, getting their home, their lives, and their routines back is the first step. As for the rest, they'll take it as it comes.
You don't know the right steps. Like they said, it's a big corporation, and we're just little people, but in this neighborhood, that's our life.
It's all about greed.
That is the message delivered to 22 displaced Mayflower homeowners on Saturday.
Crude oil is not bad. Pipelines are not bad. It's typically the corporations that run them because they don't want to spend that revenue.
Danny Hendricks represents the Pipeliners Union and feels it's in the best interest of the country and Arkansans to replace what he calls outdated pipelines.
50% of the lines in the United States was built in the 50s and 60s. And they're wore out.
Following that message, the association presented all 22 families a gift.
I do want to present y'all each family member a check, or each household a check for $1,000.
Along with the check came the advice that homeowners get legal representation against ExxonMobil.
Fortunately, believe it or not, you are fortunate that there wasn't a gas line behind your house, because most of all y'all probably be dead right now.
Speaking to homeowners, members of the Pipeliners Union called the rupture negligence on the part of ExxonMobil. At a press conference on Saturday, the oil giant addressed that claim.
The pipeline is inspected using inline inspection tools. The pipeline is monitored with our control center in Houston, and we follow the regulatory requirements for inspection and maintenance of that pipeline.
Mark Wiesner with ExxonMobil says it's still not clear what caused the rupture. He says that investigation is being handled by the Department of Transportation. Meanwhile, some Mayflower residents want their questions answered before they return home.
And my concerns are the safety of my family.
Well, it all kind of, we're just kind of taking all the information in and then seeing what we need to do with it then.
Maintenance-wise, he didn't feel that they did the proper maintenance on it, and I don't either.
They're here 24/7.
It's been some kind of week for Wayne Holcomb. He lives just feet from where ExxonMobil officials say the oil pipeline ruptured.
We're hoping everybody comes back.
While he's pleased with the work thus far, the future for Holcomb and other homeowners still uncertain.
I think they're making real good progress. We can actually stand out here without a gas mask.
On Sunday, ExxonMobil, along with city, state, and federal officials, led our cameras into the neighborhood. For the first time since the oil spill, we get a first-hand look at where the pipeline ruptured. It is in this homeowner's front yard that the spill originated, just past that orange tape. ExxonMobil officials say the oil flowed down between two homes into the cove and down Starlight Road south. In addition to that direction, it also took a path to the left and flowed in the back of two homes. Karen Tyrone with ExxonMobil.
We have a couple things going on right now. We have workers continuing to excavate contaminated soil in the area. But in addition to that, we have, if you look behind them, there seems to be another set of workers. You can see a piece of machinery. What those two crews are doing, they're putting in facilities to literally suck the oil that's left in this section of pipeline out.
The cause of the rupture still unknown. Faulkner County Judge Alan Dotson says the ruptured pipe remains untouched.
First of all, we got to remove the ruptured segment of pipe.
He says that will be done by the Department of Transportation and sent off to a lab for examination.
I think a temporary connection to the pipe will be put in place just to prevent any further seepage.
No word yet on when homeowners will return home, but for Wayne Holcomb, he's confident ExxonMobil will continue to make things right.
No, I figure they're going to make some kind of settlement to everybody. I figure that these
Liz, Amber Bartlett and her family of 6 have been camping out in a hotel room for more than a week now. That week could turn into a month. And even when they are allowed to go home, the Bartletts aren't sure they want to. Hotel stays are kind of like mini vacations for kids. But for the Bartletts,
it gets pretty boring after a while.
Their 9-day stay at a hotel in Maumelle is far from a vacation.
We go swimming a lot, there's not really much to do, but
16-year-old Reagan came home from school March 29th to find her street flooded with oil. She and her family forced to get out.
Thankfully she was at home already, so she threw some rain boots at me and I walked across.
This has been where we've lived. Other than this weekend, they were overbooked, so we had to find a different hotel to stay in.
Amber Bartlett says her family of 6 went from a 2,000 square foot home to sharing 2 connecting hotel rooms. They've been here a week, but that week could turn into a month.
We have soccer Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday nights, church on Wednesdays, and games on the weekends. So we're trying to keep as much familiarity and routine possible for them at this point.
And while Bartlett says Exxon has been as helpful as they can, her family still isn't sure if going back home after the oil spill is a good idea.
I'm concerned of the long-term health effects especially for my children. I'm an adult, but if I choose to take my children back home, am I hurting them at this point?
I don't know if I'll ever be comfortable back there, just because I don't know if fumes got into the insulation or there's just so many things that you may not know about.
What's that?
Snowman.
Okay. Do they sound?
For now, they'll make do with what they have.
Very good. Next one.
Thankful that at least
now go give me your backpack.
They have each other.
Homes can be replaced, tangible items, but your children, those tangible items cannot be replaced.
Bartlett says an Exxon representative called her earlier today to schedule a time to air out their home, turn on their air conditioning units, fans, open up the windows, and check the air quality in the house. Bartlett says even if the air is safe, she doubts her family will return until all the work is complete. Liz.
Danny Bell sits on pins and needles Tuesday.
Thought, man, what are we going to do now?
Bell's Northwood subdivision home placed on the market 2 weeks before the oil spill.
We had one person look at it, and of course this happened, and he didn't even make an offer.
Bell wondering now whether he'll get anywhere close to his list price of $178,000. He says he's scheduled to meet with Exxon this week to discuss compensation. At this point, he's unsure of the details. On Tuesday, we got our hands on that compensation package. It's broken down into a couple parts. Every person living in Northwoods, whether they own their home or not, will get $10,000 from Exxon for inconvenience and disruption. For owners wanting to sell, Exxon will buy the home at fair market value for a price similar to what they could have gotten before the spill. The oil giant says it will pay up to $8,000 in closing and moving costs that offer good for 3 years. For homeowners wanting to stay in the Northwood subdivision, Exxon will pay out a one-time payment covering any drop in value. For renters who choose to move, they'll be given 3 months' rent and a check for moving expenses. Their landlords will get 1 year rent payments for income lost. Tom Firstel, an Arkansas appraiser for 45 years now, says for homeowners looking to sell like Bell, this could be a good deal.
If they're being offered what the fair market value of the property was immediately before the break in the line, I think that's a very good opportunity for them to get away from their financial obligations to their lender.
I speak for myself and for the company when I say we regret this incident and we're here to make it right.
Karen Tyrone, Vice President of Operations for ExxonMobil, spoke about the oil spill's impact on the Mayflower community Thursday morning. In the press conference, the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality reassured residents that no oil has leaked into Lake Conway, and the Environmental Protection Agency also emphasized air quality monitoring for 3 homeowners showed safe levels.
As far as air monitoring, indoor air monitoring for re-entry, we have done monitoring for 3 residents in the neighborhood. We did some re-entry air monitoring. All 3 of those residents were non-detect.
ExxonMobil says all free oil has been removed, but they still have more work to go before the cleanup is complete.
There's another phase to this, and that's the remedial. And it will involve things like continuing to have some boom out there in case there is a sheen or seepage that's unexpected.
This was Mayflower homeowner Ryan Sania a day after the Mayflower oil spill.
Basically, if it doesn't fit in our car, we don't have it right now.
This is Sania Monday.
Well, life has been a lot different. I've experienced many changes. I'm not sleeping the same. I'm not eating the same.
Sania, one of the 22 families evacuated.
Thank you so much for being here today.
On this day, he's at Pierce Park in Mayflower. Sania listening as the Sierra Club, along with a special interest group, all talk out against the Keystone Pipeline.
This is like 10, 20 times bigger than the pipeline that just burst. We need to really think about the impacts before we make a final decision.
Sania not saying which way he leans, but Glenn Hooks with the Sierra Club is.
We're urging our elected officials to reject the proposed Keystone XL pipeline.
His opponents argue the Keystone Pipeline and one similar to the ExxonMobil pipeline that ruptured in Mayflower are the safest way to transport crude.
You know, pipeline experts always say that.
He's vocal this day on elected officials in support of pipelines.
How you can stand in Mayflower and look at this community that's been devastated by tar sands and then say you want to support a pipeline that's 10 times larger, carrying the same Canadian tar sands across this United States, it's really beyond me.
He's talking mainly about Congressman Tim Griffin and Senator Mark Pryor.
I am a supporter of Keystone. I've always been.
The senator says not only is it the safest way to transport crude, it's the least expensive way.
The new pipeline, the materials are better, the technology is better to monitor.
For Ryan Sania, either way, he says he's not likely to buy a home near any kind of pipeline.
Probably not, especially since this has happened to me.
Even before Exxon cleanup crews cleared through a Mayflower neighborhood, residents began asking questions about the long-term impact of Arkansas's largest oil spill.
The substance that's in that pipeline coming through our state, and it's about maintenance and inspection, and it's about the condition of the pipeline.
Residents Catherine Chun and Kim LeGreen reached out to Little Rock attorney Philip Duncan, seeking the strongest legal recourse.
The more I looked at it, the more it became clear to me that it should be a class action as far as I was concerned as a lawyer.
Duncan anticipates the class action move will prompt more Mayflower residents to join together on the issue. Along with property damage from the spill, Duncan says questions surrounding the entire pipeline must be answered.
Not only about their efforts to clean up this oil spill, but we also want to know why it fractured, why it ruptured, and what the condition of the pipe is, not only in Mayflower but elsewhere.
The attorney says residents worry about what can happen along the other 300 miles of the Pegasus Pipeline. It begins in Randolph County and crosses southwest to Little River County.
We know that this pipeline runs underneath the Arkansas River and through the watershed here in Little Rock. We want to know it's not going to affect our waterways, and we want to know it's not going to affect our natural resources.
This spill has caused a significant and lasting negative impact upon our state's environment, and Exxon, as the responsible party for the incident, should be penalized for those impacts.
More than 2 months ago, Attorney General Dustin McDaniel launched an investigation into the March 29th oil spill in Mayflower. His findings alarming.
That the pipeline rupture caused a release of Canadian tar sands oil that polluted the state's air, soil, and waters. Furthermore, ExxonMobil has illegally stored the waste generated from the cleanup process.
McDaniel says Exxon violated the Arkansas Water and Air Pollution Control Act as well as the State Hazardous Waste Management Act, leading state and federal officials to file a lawsuit against Exxon, asking for civil penalties.
And to store this material without following the law in advance, and then to not remove it upon being demanded to do so, we felt was particularly concerning and should be included in this litigation.
Now, here off of Highway 36 is the site that the Attorney General brought into question at today's press conference. Now, back on May 8th, the state asked ExxonMobil to remove hazardous materials, including hazardous debris, as well as fluid filled inside the tanker trucks here at this site. Now, over a month later, and those hazardous materials are still here. When I contacted ExxonMobil for a response, this is what they said. We are aware of the filing. However, we have yet to review the allegations and have not been formally served with the complaint. Until the hazardous materials are completely removed, the state will continue pushing for the clean environment they say they deserve.
The Hazardous Waste Act provides for penalties of up to $25,000 per day per violation. That includes today, tomorrow, and until Exxon obeys the lawful orders of the state of Arkansas. As to the air and water quality.
At Stroud's Country Diner in Mayflower, lunch is being served and memories of March's oil spill are fading.
The fellows that have worked on the project, they were here and have been very helpful in the community.
Robert Hall, who is a fifth-generation Mayflower resident, was not surprised when he caught word of the lawsuit being filed against Exxon. But as far as cleanup efforts go, Hall says he's pleased with Exxon's response.
They have done an exceptional job, in my opinion. Now, of course, the people have had to move, in the subdivision over there, but it's kind of like my house got hit by lightning. So, that's an act of God, and accidents do happen.
Word of the new complaint against the oil company traveled slow through the small town. Hall says while he hates what has happened, there is a silver lining.
Things are really being left in a better shape, from what I can understand, than they were to begin with.
Alan Dodson, the Faulkner County judge, has been at the oil spill site since it happened and says he's seen a big improvement over the course of a few months.
We're standing in the cul-de-sac where the rupture occurred, just above the cul-de-sac. The oil ran through this cul-de-sac.
That spill resulting in lots of oil-soaked debris.
Everything from soiled dirt, where oil soaked into the dirt, that all had to be removed.
And as far as the way the waste was disposed of, now coming into question. Dotson says he has not read the complaint, but believes it's more about a timing issue than contaminating the environment.
It's my understanding that Exxon just hasn't finished that process. May have taken longer than ADEQ feels was appropriate, or may not.
Exxon knows what's in their pipeline. They knew it was toxic. However, they did not evacuate us, and therefore we're sick.
Health concerns front and center at a town hall meeting in Mayflower Saturday. Some residents say their close proximity to the pipeline exposed them to chemicals which are already causing health problems less than 3 months after the spill.
I have had terrible headaches. all kinds of just dizziness, like you lose your balance.
See, there's a good glob of it right there.
Genevieve Long is a 28-year resident of Mayflower. She's concerned about the oil still being carried from a drainage ditch into the wetlands right next to her home on Lake Conway.
Our lives are at stake due to cancers and neurological disorders due to inhaling and being around these chemicals.
While some are demanding answers from health officials, others are leaving for good.
Anytime anything's come up with Exxon or anything related to the spill, Exxon's representatives have been, fair and equitable. And
Mark Giese has no complaints with Exxon, but since putting his house on the market after the spill, he says there's been very limited interest.
it's still a nice neighborhood to live with or live in. I'm just moving because of, some long-term unknowns.
Giese is one of 6 homeowners on his street trying to leave Mayflower and leave the aftermath of the spill behind for good.
Everybody is fleeing because just like the animals are fleeing, it's poison here.
At Stroud's Country Diner in Mayflower, lunch is being served and memories of March's oil spill are fading.
The fellows that have worked on the project, they were here and have been very helpful in the community.
Robert Hall, who is a 5th-generation Mayflower resident, was not surprised when he caught word of the lawsuit being filed against Exxon. But as far as cleanup efforts go, Hall says he's pleased with Exxon's response.
They have done an exceptional job, in my opinion. Now, of course, the people have had to move, in the subdivision over there, but it's kind of like my house got hit by lightning. So, that's an act of God, and accidents do happen.
Word of the new complaint against the oil company traveled slow through the small town. Hall says while he hates what has happened, there is a silver lining.
Things are really being left in a better shape, from what I can understand, than they were to begin with.
Alan Dodson, the Faulkner County judge, has been at the oil spill site since it happened and says he's seen a big improvement over the course of a few months.
We're standing in the cul-de-sac where the rupture occurred, just above the cul-de-sac. The oil ran through this cul-de-sac.
That spill resulting in lots of oil-soaked debris.
Everything from soiled dirt, where oil soaked into the dirt, that all had to be removed.
And as far as the way the waste was disposed of, now coming into question. Dotson says he has not read the complaint, but believes it's more about a timing issue than contaminating the environment.
It's my understanding that Exxon just hasn't finished that process. May have taken longer than ADEQ feels was appropriate, or may not.
Exxon knows what's in their pipeline. They knew it was toxic. However, they did not evacuate us, and therefore we're sick.
Health concerns front and center at a town hall meeting in Mayflower Saturday. Some residents say their close proximity to the pipeline exposed them to chemicals which are already causing health problems less than 3 months after the spill.
I have had terrible headaches, all kinds of just dizziness, like you lose your balance.
See, there's a good glob of it right there.
Genevieve Long is a 28-year resident of Mayflower. She's concerned about the oil still being carried from a drainage ditch into the wetlands right next to her home on Lake Conway.
Our lives are at stake due to cancers and neurological disorders due to inhaling and being around these chemicals.
While some are demanding answers from health officials, others are leaving for good.
Anytime anything's come up with Exxon or anything related to the spill, Exxon's representatives have been, fair and equitable. And
Mark Giese has no complaints with Exxon, but since putting his house on the market after the spill, he says there's been very limited interest.
it's still a nice neighborhood to live with or live in. I'm just moving because of, some long-term unknowns.
Giese is one of 6 homeowners on his street trying to leave Mayflower and leave the aftermath of the spill behind for good.
Everybody is fleeing because just like the animals are fleeing, it's poison here.
Liz Dawn, the congressman, wanted an update to see how things are progressing in the small community, to talk with residents and address any of their needs. You might recall Exxon released an independent report late last week that cited a manufacturer defect causing the spill. The independent laboratory concluded that the root cause of the failure can be attributed to original manufacturing defects, namely the hook cracks near the seam. In meeting with residents along with city and county officials, Griffin has said he's kept in contact with some of them, and today's visit was to make sure everything is going okay.
And this is just part of an ongoing effort to make sure that everything that can be done is being done.
This is not his first trip to the Mayflower community. Besides the cleanup progress taking longer than expected, residents have another major concern. And coming up tonight at 6, I'll take a look at what's now on the minds of many residents. When the federal government is involved, you can bet the IRS isn't far behind. How the IRS is now taxing the monies the residents have received. Liz, Dawn.
These were the homes that were directly impacted and had oil beneath the foundations.
5 years ago, this was a brand new home on a prime plot of land in an upscale subdivision. On Monday, it was reduced to a giant pile of wood and metal scraps in a matter of minutes. After the Exxon pipeline ruptured in March, oil seeped into the foundation of these homes. Last month, the homeowners sold to the oil company and moved out of Mayflower.
It was determined that demolition would be an efficient and effective way to remove all of that oil from beneath the foundations.
Neighbors tell THV their subdivision is now a ghost town, and the eyesore of 2 demolished homes will only add to the negative stigma of living near an oil spill.
I watched the progress of the homes being built, and I see them every morning, and to have them torn down in one day, that's, you know, it's just unreal to me.
On the afternoon of March 29th, Mayflower Street Department Supervisor Jimmy Joe Johnson was at home when he got a call that oil was spilling into the streets of his hometown. As Street Department Supervisor for 15 years, Johnson knew the lay of the land and what it would take to keep oil out of Lake Conway.
I'd never dreamed of seeing oil running down a street, you know, a little long through my ditches.
Johnson, along with a crew of locals, used dump trucks and backhoes to construct a barricade that kept oily water from surging into the 6,700-acre lake.
I knew that that one ditch that it was in was going to bring it straight to this cove. It wasn't going to spread out.
The first job Johnson and his crew tackled was plugging a pair of 48-inch metal pipes connecting the cove and the main lake. That quick thinking helped isolate the oil to a 30-acre cove beside Lake Conway.
If we hadn't got it stopped right here, it would have went right into the lake.
Next, Johnson and his crew created a man-made dike the length of a football field with gravel and large pipes, causing the oil to rise and pool, where it would be sucked up with vacuums and skimmers.
It wasn't just me or the city, it was the county. It was our fire department, water department. We was all in this trying to stop it.
By the time the rain began that Friday night, the Mayflower Street Department had exhausted 75 tons of gravel.
It wasn't something that I had expected, ever anticipated happening here in this town.
A year later, the lake, which is renowned for its catfish, crappie, bluegill, and bass, has yet to show any signs of Tarzan's oil in the water or aquatic life. Johnson says he just did what anyone else would have done, but to the residents of this small town, he's considered a hero.
That's what I wanted to try to do, was keep it out of Lake Conway, and we did that.